The fluorescent lights of Miller's Corner store buzzed softly overhead as Ellie Carter meticulously straightened the rows of candy bars near the register. At 33, Ellie had mastered the subtle art of being nearly invisible, a skill honed over years spent in the foster care system, where survival often depended on going unnoticed. Her movements were efficient yet gentle, her presence muted in the rhythm of the small neighborhood store where she had worked the night shift for almost 3 years. The digital clock on the register blinked. 9:42 p.m. Ellie's gaze flicked to the door. 3 minutes. She reached beneath the counter and retrieved a small paper bag she'd prepared earlier. Inside was a simple half pint of 2% milk. Nothing fancy, just $1.29 worth of quiet intention. She placed it just out of view from casual eyes, but within easy reach. At exactly 9:45 p.m., the bell above the door jingled. A small figure stepped inside, briefly silhouetted by the darkness of the street beyond. The girl couldn't have been more than 9, her blue knit hat pulled low over her ears, her coat woefully inadequate for the February cold. Her sneakers were worn thin, the right one beginning to separate at the toe. She paused just inside the threshold, scanning the room, ensuring it was mostly empty before approaching the counter with cautious steps. Ellie offered a faint, reassuring smile but said nothing, drawing no undue attention to the girl. She continued ringing up an older man's cigarettes and energy drink, thanking him with a practiced warmth as he exited into the night. Only once they were alone did Ellie quietly reach for the paper bag. "Same as always, sweetheart. Stay warm," she said softly, sliding the bag across the counter. The girl didn't speak. She never did. She simply nodded, a small, nearly imperceptible dip of the chin, and took the bag in her red, chilled hands, clutching it tightly as if it might vanish. For the briefest moment, her eyes met Ellie's. A flash of silent gratitude passed between them before she turned and slipped out the door, vanishing into the night. Ellie watched through the fogged window as the girl disappeared down the block, her small figure swallowed by shadow. No one waited for her. No parent called after her. She just faded into the neighborhood with the milk secured in her grip. "You know that's the 4th time this week," said Marcus, the teenage stock boy, his voice drifting from the soda cooler where he was restocking shelves. "Don't you ever wonder who she is? Or where she goes with that milk?" Ellie didn't look up as she wiped down the counter. "Not my business to ask." "You never ring it up," Marcus observed, his tone more curious than accusatory. "Boss would flip if he knew you were giving away product." "I cover it," Ellie said simply, though they both knew her $11.50 an hour barely covered her studio apartment and utilities. Marcus closed the cooler door, leaning against it, arms crossed. "Seriously, Ellie, why do you do it? You don't even know her name." Ellie paused, her cleaning cloth suspended midair. For a long moment, her gaze seemed to pierce beyond the store's fluorescent walls, perhaps into her own memories. "Because someone once did this for me," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned forward to catch it. Sometimes, a small kindness is all it takes. Then, with finality, she resumed cleaning. The subject was closed. Marcus shrugged and returned to his tasks, but not before noting how Ellie's eyes again drifted to the door, as if making sure the girl had gotten away safely. Later that night, when the register totals didn't quite match the inventory, Ellie quietly added $1.29 from her own wallet. She'd been doing this for nearly 3 months now, ever since that first night she'd spotted the girl peering through the window at the dairy case, breath fogging the glass, unable to work up the courage to come inside. Ellie had recognized that look instantly. Hunger laced with pride, need tempered by fear. She had worn that same look once, long ago, when a kind convenience store clerk named Miss Gina had accidentally dropped an extra sandwich into her bag 3 times a week during a particularly hard winter. As she locked the store at 11 p.m., Ellie thought of the girl's thin coat and the forecasted weekend storm. Perhaps tomorrow she'd add a pair of gloves to the bag, the $3.99 kind they kept near the register. The girl's hands had looked so cold. The following Tuesday brought freezing rain that tapped impatiently against the store windows. Ellie had just finished mopping muddy footprints when Mr. Miller himself walked in, his brow furrowed even more deeply than usual. The owner of 3 neighborhood convenience stores, he rarely visited after dark, leaving the night shift to Ellie's capable hands. "Evening, Ellie," he said, shaking off his wet coat. "Need to check some numbers with you." Ellie felt a flutter of unease. "Of course, Mr. Miller. Something wrong?" He pulled a folder from his briefcase. "Inventory doesn't match sales for the past 2 months. We're consistently short on dairy, specifically milk." He laid spreadsheets across the counter, pointing to rows of highlighted discrepancies. "Any idea what's going on?" Ellie kept her face neutral. "We get spillage sometimes. Delivery guys have shorted us a carton or two." "For 12 weeks straight?" Mr. Miller's eyebrow arched. "That's almost $50 in milk." "I'll pay closer attention," Ellie said, her stomach nodding. She hadn't realized the losses had added up so clearly. "No, see that you do." He packed up the papers. "I run a business, not a charity. 1 more month of unexplained shortages, and I'll need to reconsider staffing." The warning was unmistakable. After he left, Ellie leaned against the counter, her heart racing. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not with rent due and her car payment already 2 weeks late. But the idea of turning away the quiet girl in the threadbare coat felt just as unbearable. That night, 9:45 p.m. came and went with no sign of the girl. Ellie found herself glancing at the door every few minutes, anxiety growing as the clock ticked past 10, then 10:30. By closing, she stood near the front window, peering into the street. "Maybe she found somewhere else to get milk," Marcus offered as they locked up. "Maybe," Ellie echoed, though her gut said otherwise. The next day was her day off, but Ellie wandered past the store anyway, eyes scanning the snowy streets. The freezing rain had turned to wet snow, coating tree branches and making the sidewalks slick. She wondered if the girl had somewhere safe to wait out the storm. When Ellie returned to work Thursday night, she placed the milk in the bag like always, though her hope dimmed. Then, at 10:17 p.m., the bell chimed. The girl stood there, snow melting from her shoulders, her eyes red and puffy, her hat askew. She looked even smaller, fragile, diminished somehow by her absence. "I was worried about you," Ellie said before she could stop herself, reaching for the now expired milk, still perfectly good. "Same as always, sweetheart. Stay warm." The girl took the bag with trembling hands. As she turned to leave, Ellie made a snap decision. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, soft blue handkerchief, one of the few possessions she had kept from childhood. "Here," she said, pressing it into the girl's hand. "Might help with whatever's making those eyes so sad." For the first time, the girl's stoic mask cracked. Her chin quivered, and she clutched the handkerchief tightly. Then, wordless as ever, she turned and hurried out. Ellie followed to the window, and this time, watched as the girl's path veered away from the residential blocks. Instead, she walked toward the small veteran cemetery at the end of the street. Through the falling snow, Ellie saw the small figure slip through the iron gates and disappear among rows of white headstones. "What's she doing in there at this hour?" Marcus asked, appearing beside her. "I don't know," Ellie murmured, but a new worry took hold of her, one that made the risk of losing her job seem almost trivial. That night, Ellie added $1.29 to the register again. Mr. Miller had done another spot check earlier. His expression left no doubt he was watching closely. Tomorrow, he'd review the receipts. As Ellie walked home through quiet streets, she wondered how much longer she could keep this up, and what would happen to the girl if she stopped. The cemetery visit unsettled her deeply. What child went there alone at night? Should she call someone? But who? Reporting the girl could mean foster care. Ellie knew too well what awaited there. "It's just milk," she whispered. "I'm just giving her milk." But she knew better. She was offering something far more vital, acknowledgement. The simple, sacred act of seeing someone, even when they tried their hardest not to be seen. Would you have noticed this child? Would you have said, "I see you"? If you believe in looking out for the forgotten, read on. Saturday morning dawned with unexpected sunshine that made the lingering snow glitter like glass. Ellie had been called in for an early shift, a rare occurrence that meant sacrificing her laundry day, but she welcomed the extra hours. She was sweeping near the front of the store when a deep rumble drew her gaze upward. One by one, 6 black military jeeps with government plates rolled down the street in perfect formation. Traffic slowed as drivers pulled aside to stare at the unexpected procession. The vehicles, sleek and solemn against the slushy street, came to a synchronized halt directly in front of Miller's corner store. "What in the world?" breathed Mrs. Levine, a regular customer mid-examination of tomatoes. Other shoppers abandoned their baskets and pressed to the windows, curiosity mounting. A strange, prickling sensation ran down Ellie's spine as the driver's door of the lead vehicle opened. A tall man in full military dress stepped out, his posture straight, shoes gleaming despite the grime. His chest bore the insignia of a U.S. Army major, ribbons lined with precision. From the other vehicles, similarly uniformed men and women emerged. 3 men, 2 women, expression somber. The major approached the entrance, a manila envelope in one hand and a framed photo in the other. As he entered, the doorbell's chime rang unnaturally loud in the hush. His eyes swept the room and locked onto Ellie, still holding her broom, frozen beside the candy display. "Ellie Carter?" he asked, voice deep but kind. She nodded, suddenly parched. "That's me." The major stepped forward. "I'm Major Robert Daniels, United States Army. You've been giving milk to a young girl every night at approximately 9:45 p.m. for the past 3 months." It wasn't a question. Ellie felt the blood drain from her face. Behind her, she sensed Mr. Miller step from the back office, drawn by the noise, his presence a sudden weight. And in that suspended moment, everything changed. Absolutely. Here's your rewritten dramatic narrative script in asterisk, asterisk, paragraph style, asterisk, asterisk. Applying professional polish while preserving asterisk, asterisk, all original details, tone structure, asterisk, asterisk, and asterisk, asterisk, maintaining the full-length asterisk, asterisk. Approx. 2,800 words, as requested. She had just started to speak when the major raised his hand gently, signaling her to wait. "The girl's name is Sophie Wilson," he said evenly. "She's 9 years old." He turned a framed photograph toward Ellie. The image showed a girl, Sophie, beaming beside a man in camouflage fatigues. They had the same eyes, the same slight dimple in their left cheek. The man was kneeling beside her, one arm around her small shoulders, both squinting in harsh desert sunlight. Her father was Staff Sergeant James Wilson, 10th Mountain Division. The major continued, his voice steady, though something in his expression had softened. He was deployed to Afghanistan 3 months ago. It was supposed to be his final tour before retirement. The use of past tense didn't escape Ellie. A cold realization began to settle in her chest, like snow accumulating on stone. 2 weeks ago, Sergeant Wilson's unit was ambushed while escorting a humanitarian convoy, the major said, pausing briefly. He didn't make it home. Ellie's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes stung, suddenly and sharply. Around her, the store had fallen completely silent. Even Mr. Miller stood motionless at the register. "In his personal effects, we found this," the major said, opening a manila envelope and carefully removing a folded, well-worn letter. His final note to his commanding officer. It contained an unusual request. The major's eyes met Ellie's directly. He asked that we locate the kind cashier at Miller's store, who gives my daughter milk every night when she sneaks out to visit my parents' graves. Ellie froze, her breath caught. The weight of the moment pressed against her. She had never known the girl's name, never asked, never questioned why she came. Mies? Sophie has been staying with her grandparents, Sergeant Wilson's parents, since he deployed, the major explained. Their home is near the veterans cemetery, where the sergeant's grandfather is buried. After her father's death, Sophie began slipping out at night to sit by her great-grandfather's grave. She told no one. Not about the visits, not about you. The memory came flooding back. Red-rimmed eyes, a too-thin coat, the silent girl vanishing into the dark. Ellie's heart cracked open. Sergeant Wilson wrote that Sophie mentioned you during their final video call, the major continued. He said it gave him peace to know that, even while serving far from home, someone was looking out for his little girl. His tone remained professional, but there was emotion beneath it, barely restrained. Her father didn't make it home, but in his final note, he asked us to find you, the one who gave his daughter hope every night. Ellie took an instinctive step backward, overwhelmed. How could something so small, a carton of milk that cost less than her morning coffee, have mattered this much? And how had anyone known? She had never told anyone, never even told her boss. I don't understand, she said finally, her voice barely audible. How did he know? Sophie told him, the major answered gently. During their calls, she said an angel at the corner store gave her milk every night and never asked questions. She said it made her feel less alone while he was gone. Behind them, a quiet rustle broke the silence. Ellie turned to see the customers in the store forming a semicircle, watching. Mrs. Levine was openly weeping. Mr. Miller stood with his head bowed. One by one, the customers rose from their seats and stood, a silent show of respect that spread throughout the store until everyone was on their feet. Through the front window, Ellie saw the other military personnel who had arrived with the major. They now stood beside their vehicles in formal posture. This wasn't just a message delivery. It was a ceremony, one meant for her. All for a simple act of kindness she had never expected anyone to notice. The next hour passed in a blur, emotion layered upon revelation. Major Daniels explained that Sophie's grandparents had been worried about her nightly disappearances. Eventually, they followed her one evening and witnessed the girl quietly receiving the carton of milk from Ellie. After Sergeant Wilson's death, they found Sophie's journal, filled with mentions of the milk lady. They connected the dots and found the letter. The Wilson family asked us to convey their profound gratitude, the major said later, standing in the small parking lot where a gathering had quickly formed. Word had spread through the neighborhood. Residents had begun arriving, many carrying flowers, some holding small American flags. Mr. Miller, who had remained silent through the major's account, finally stepped forward. His usual sternness was gone. Ellie, he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Why didn't you tell me about Sophie? Ellie shrugged, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. It wasn't a big deal, just milk. You were worried I'd fire you. Yes, she admitted softly. Mr. Miller shook his head, looking pained. Actions like yours aren't reasons for termination, Ellie. They're reasons for emulation. He turned to address the crowd. Starting today, Miller's Corner Store will establish a community tab for military families in need. No child should have to sneak around for basic necessities. A cheer rose from the crowd. Among them, Ellie spotted several local veterans. They had come wearing old uniforms and VFW caps, forming a respectful semicircle near the military vehicles. One elderly gentleman had begun arranging a small display of flags and flowers near the store entrance, a makeshift memorial quietly taking shape. Major Daniels approached Ellie again, this time holding a small velvet box. "The Wilson family asked me to give you this," he said. Inside was a military challenge coin, a token traditionally awarded in recognition of excellence. This one bore the insignia of Sergeant Wilson's unit. "It's not typically given to civilians," the major said. "But they felt, and we all felt, that your actions embodied the values we strive to uphold." Ellie held the coin carefully. It was small, but felt impossibly heavy, weighted by meaning. She thought of Sophie, of the girl's quiet presence, her red eyes, the silent gratitude in her glance. All for a carton of milk and a gentle phrase. Asterisk, "Same as always, sweetheart. Stay warm." A commotion at the edge of the crowd drew everyone's attention. A silver sedan had pulled in. From it emerged an elderly couple, each holding the hand of a small figure between them. Sophie. Now dressed in a proper winter coat and new boots, she scanned the gathering with wide eyes. When she spotted Ellie, her face lit up with recognition. She tugged free from her grandparents and ran forward, stopping just short of colliding with Ellie's legs. "You're the milk lady," she said, her voice soft but clear, the first words Ellie had ever heard from her. Ellie knelt to meet her gaze. "And you're Sophie?" Sophie nodded solemnly. "My dad died," she said, with the heartbreaking bluntness of children. "But he told Grandma and Grandpa about you, before he did. He said you were kind, like an angel." Ellie's eyes welled. "I'm just a cashier, sweetheart. My dad said sometimes that's all it takes, just one person being nice when they don't have to be." Sophie's grandmother approached. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she smiled. "We didn't know she was sneaking out," she said quietly. "After James..." Her voice broke. "After we lost him, she became so withdrawn. We didn't realize she was going to the cemetery every night to write him notes." She reached for Ellie's hand. "You were the only bright spot in her routine. The only thing she looked forward to." Mr. Miller cleared his throat, stepping forward once more. "We'd like to do something more permanent," he announced. "With the community's help, we're establishing a small scholarship in Sergeant Wilson's name. We're calling it Ellie's Carton, to support children of military personnel in our area." The idea was met with immediate support. People offered donations on the spot, pressing bills into Mr. Miller's hands, pledging checks, suggesting fundraisers. Someone mentioned contacting the local newspaper. Through it all, Sophie remained at Ellie's side, occasionally touching the blue handkerchief still tied around her wrist like a bracelet. "I came back to return this," she whispered, looking down at the fabric. "But I think I'll keep it a little longer, if that's okay." "It's yours now," Ellie assured her. As the impromptu ceremony wound down, Sophie's grandparents invited Ellie to dinner. "Sophie would love it, and we want to thank you properly," her grandmother said warmly. "You don't need to thank me," Ellie replied. "Maybe not," the older woman agreed. "But we need to do it anyway. That's how communities heal, by recognizing the good in each other." In the weeks that followed, Ellie's simple act of kindness rippled outward in ways no one could have imagined. The local paper ran the story on its front page. It was picked up by regional outlets. The Ellie's Carton Asterisk Scholarship Fund grew rapidly. Miller's Corner store became a hub for care packages sent to deploy troops. Sophie, too, began to heal. She still visited the store, but now during daylight hours, always with her grandparents. Each time she brought something with her, a carton of milk, which she placed in a special box by the register designated for families in need. One evening, as Ellie was finishing her shift, Sophie arrived with her grandmother, clutching a book. "I made this for you," she said shyly, handing it over. Inside were childish but heartfelt drawings, Scenes of her nighttime visits to the store, the cemetery, and imagined images of her father in uniform. The final page showed Ellie behind the counter, angel wings on her back, a carton of milk in her hands. Beneath it, in blocky handwriting, were 5 simple words. Tessel, asterisk asterisk heroes, don't always wear uniforms, dot asterisk asterisk. Ellie pulled the girl into a tight hug, heart full. Later, when a persistent reporter asked her why she'd done it, why she'd given the milk, night after night, without ever asking for thanks, Ellie shrugged. I just gave her milk, she said. But she gave me a reason to keep showing up. Kindness doesn't seek recognition, but sometimes even the military sends someone just to say thank you. The story of Ellie Carter reminds us that the smallest gestures can create ripples we never see, touching lives in ways we cannot imagine. A simple carton of milk, offered without expectation, became a lifeline for a grieving child, a comfort for a soldier overseas, and a spark for a whole community's healing. We don't always know the battles others are fighting. A silent girl with tearful eyes, a cashier rounding up from her own paycheck, a father halfway around the world. In a world that glorifies grand gestures and public charity, it's the quiet acts of compassion, done without witness or applause, that reveal the best of us. Sometimes, all it takes is a paper bag, a carton of milk, and 5 softly spoken words.